Hey, this is Dennis, and welcome to another episode of the Grounded Reason podcast, where we cover topics focusing on cord cutting, saving money, and being an all-round citizen of the internet. Joel is off this week, so I'm without a co-pilot and flying solo. I think he said he had, Mutaba, something like that. But as for this week's episode, we got a bunch of cord cutting news to cover. I also wanted to go over a disaster of an article that hit USA Today last week. The author basically said that cord cutting costs just as much as cable, which, if you're listening to this show or you read the blog, you know that that's obviously not true. Our buddy FCC Chairman Ajit Pai dodged a very important question he was asked in front of Congress last week, so I'm going to discuss a bit of that. I also got a bunch of cord-cutting tech to get to this week. A new streaming service hit from across the pond over in merry old England. We have possibly a new streaming device coming from TiVo soon that we'll talk a bit about. And Verizon actually did something kind of cool with their internet service. I'll let you see for yourself. And last but not least, baseball is approaching. So today I'm going to get into how to watch Major League Baseball, even if you don't have cable, including your local market teams. So stay tuned. We're going to get to all of that in a moment. However, first I wanted to talk about a study that came out last week from TiVo. And TiVo's been doing this study for a while. They're obviously, with their DVR system, they have an interest in who is going to be cutting the cord, who is going to be keeping cable, where to shift that investment, because they have TiVo boxes that'll, cover both of those markets. Yeah, but I was able to read this study over at multichannel.com. Jeff Baumgardner wrote a really good article on it describing the findings, basically, they calculate the market of consumers without pay TV to be about 17% of the market. And that's fairly close to where I am. When I look at my Nielsen every once in a while on the show, you've heard me go over, the Nielsen numbers. I'm roughly in that range, 17, 18%. But of that group, 19.8% said that they cut the cord in the last year. So that's a fifth, 1/5 of cord cutters. And that's 1/5 of, 18 million at last count cut within the last year. And even more so, they said that the study showed that from third quarter of 2016 to fourth quarter of 2016, the number of new cord cutters was up, the rate increased 1.9%. So it's 20% on the whole, up 1.9. So it was roughly about 18 in quarter three. And year over year, that rate went up 2.3%. So not only are a ton of people cutting the cord, but the rate at which people are cutting the cord is going up faster and faster by the quarter. Now, TiVo said that the 20% was the highest percentage of cord cutters in a single quarter since TiVo began tracking this metric back in 2015. And when they asked, what was the reason that people cut the cord, price, of course, was price was the highest. And 80% said that they cut the cord because pay TV is just way too expensive. The next most popular reason, and they could pick multiple reasons, which is why the percentages aren't going to equal 100%. But the next reason was that the people already use these streaming services more than they're using cable. So your Netflix, your Hulu, your Amazon Video. 48.3% of respondents said that they're watching these streaming services more than their cable package. So there really wasn't a point to keeping their pay TV, and they just ditched it in favor of the streaming services they're already paying for. And following that reason, 27.2% said that they use an antenna to get basic broadcast TV. And I guess that's, all they wanted. So they ditched their pay TV. People were also asked if they were going to, either switch services or possibly cut their service altogether sometime in the next 6 months. And the churn rate over all the various possibilities between, switching your plan, getting some online service, or, if it was even up in the air, if you were considering it or on the fence, this factors into. But 47.2% of respondents said that they were considering a change. That's a big number. That means a lot of people are not happy with their current pay TV provider. When they were asked what would keep them with their current provider, the top two answers are actually kind of cord cutting related. 63.7% said that they wanted to go with a service that was more flexible. Like if they gave them the ability to go a la carte or something like that, or just, pick the channels that they want to watch. And the second place getter there with 45% was if the service would do a better job of integrating streaming sources like Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon. So really, even people who have cable want that cord cutting experience, it seems. Yeah, I mean, I've been following these surveys for a while now. I mean, you've heard me do the Nielsen numbers on here on cord cutting every so often, and it's really been going up now since, I want to say like 2013. It's been going up for almost 5 years, 4 or 5 years now. People are just been cutting the cord in droves. I mean, it's almost 20% of the viewership market is now cord cutters. So you would think that those people are saving money. And and I know that they are. But I know one gentleman who thinks they're not. And that's Jefferson Graham. He has a column called Talking Tech that shows up in the USA Today, excuse me. And he writes a piece that's not very original. We covered a few of these before here on the podcast and on the blog where they make that mistake where they perpetuate that myth that you need a cord cutting package that is comparable to what you're used to getting on cable. Now, by that I mean, all this content that you pay for and you don't watch. When I cut the cord, originally we already had Netflix, we already had Amazon Prime. And that's most people. A recent study showed that the average person with cable spends about $15 a month in streaming services already. And that was us, because the Amazon Prime essentially pays for itself if you do Christmas shopping over Amazon, because you get the free shipping. And they must be losing money hand over fist on that service, because I can't see. They give away so much. You get so much with it. And honestly, we would have it even if just for the shipping alone, we would have it. So, but I digress. So we had Amazon Prime and we had Netflix. We got an antenna. We got an internet only, package from Verizon, which cost us about $50, and then the antenna, and then that was it. The only thing we were missing is about a handful of shows that were on AMC. And those were like 4 or 5 shows. And you've heard me say this before. You just buy them from iTunes or Amazon. The season passes for each one are like $26, $27, something like that. Yeah. And you get to watch those the day after they air. So, if you watch 5 shows on cable, you're talking $125 a year. And that's what people pay for internet and cable a month. And even if you watch 10 shows, you're talking about $250 a year. It's still much cheaper than cable. He even admits in the piece that the average person only watches 17 different channels anyway. Now, when you really if you look at it on a per show basis, how many shows do you really watch a year? Probably about the same. 15 to 17. The major networks you get with the antenna, the rest you're picking up from, you can pick up from Amazon or iTunes. If you want Game of Thrones, pick up HBO for a month or two and drop it. The article is actually based on a debate that the author had with the founder of Cord Cutter News, Luke Boma. And the guy, I mean, he conceded, Jefferson Graham, that is, conceded the point that currently you can save money cutting the cord. But I think he's talking about this mythical future where we all need to buy all of these services, because he starts rattling it off like he's like, yeah, but you have Hulu and Netflix and CBS All Access and Amazon and Filmstruck and Sling TV. And then he goes into how YouTube TV and DirecTV and, View are all and it's not like no one's buying all of that. No one's buying half of that. Most people will be fine with one or two streaming services, and they might, some people might pick up a Sling TV or a DirecTV. You don't have to, though. You can get an antenna, and you can just buy your shows a la carte from Amazon or from iTunes. I mean, I made my case to the guy over Twitter, and you can check it out too. If you follow us, or you can just, go follow us at Grounded Reason, and you can see it there. I hit him with about like 5 tweets on, points that he does not mention in his article and really doesn't even consider. First off, the funniest thing is he made this statement that you can get a double play, like a internet and cable for, $90. And I don't know where he's getting that deal, because he might be looking at like the $89.99 promo price, or even $79.99 or whatever it is. But once you factor in your broadcast fee, then you factor in your, if you have regional sports network fee, then you factor in your taxes, then you factor in HD box rental. You factor in multiple boxes if you have 2 or 3 TVs. You're talking close to $150 off of that promo price. It really does. If you look, and we covered this way back in episode 14. If you look at the promo price and you kind of break all of the costs out and you actually go through the service, your bill's going to be double that promo price. Right there, episode 14, cable boxes and corruption. And you'll listen to that episode. It'll break it down line by line on what you usually wind up paying on top of those promo prices. And I'm telling you, it's not $90. It's usually at least, even for your basic network box with no add-ons and internet, you're getting close to $100 right there. And that doesn't even include any like premium channels or any channels outside of ABC, NBC, Fox, and CBS. So that's no Netflix, no Hulu, you're already there. So I don't know what this guy's talking about. I will link the article in the show notes so you can read it. But then there's some other things he kind of glossed over, commercial free, like that some of the streaming services are commercial free. And I told him, that's not something to kind of just be glossed over, because if you figure watch 2 hours of TV a night, and I've said this before, commercial free, 2 hours a night. You take those, that's a half hour of commercials in those 2 hours. You take that over a year, you're talking about 182 and a half hours. Time is money, people. 182 and a half waking hours. That's weeks and weeks of time that you're spent watching commercials. He ignored the fact that you can just drop services whenever you want. So you can juggle services. Like, you could even buy all those services, but if you do it in separate months, you're not going to be paying all that money. You're going to be paying about $10 a month for each one. So you can run through all the services, and a lot of them will let you binge watch. So there's a way you can save money that he completely ignored. You could also, and I've said this, I said this earlier, most people with cable already have $15 a month in streaming services. And I read a report recently that when you cut the cord, it goes up $5. You're paying like 20, the average cord cutter spends about $20 a month in streaming services. Really, my bottom line, if you can't save money cutting the cord, you're doing it wrong. So, yeah. So, if I see something like that out there, I usually try to engage the writer. And if you follow us on Twitter, you know that already. And if you're not following us on Twitter, you should follow us on Twitter. And you should also hit the subscribe button on iTunes. But we tell you that every week. But really do it. Go ahead and pick up your phone, hit that subscribe button. We go up in the rankings. People see the show. Joel will be happy. Everybody wants to make Joel happy, right? All right, on to other things. There's been a device that TiVo has been kind of tossing around for a while, an idea called the TiVo Maverick. Now, the idea of the Maverick is it's two tuners in a box that like a kind of like a streaming box that connects to your router. And the plan is it will record shows from your antenna into some type of cloud DVR. Now, when I originally heard about this about 2 years ago, that was very cutting edge and exciting. But there's already a bunch of devices that are promising that. Like, for instance, like Tableau at CES this year announced that they were going to try some type of cloud DVR storage later on in the year. Same thing with Channels, which is a device that you can use on your Apple TV. Basically, you need an HD home run, which is a digital tuner that plugs into your router, connects to your antenna to transcode that antenna signal into a stream that you can pass over your network. Well, Channels is working on something where you can push those shows up to a cloud DVR and watch them on your Apple TV. And I mean, these things are still in beta; they're still being tested. Well, last week the TiVo Maverick showed up on the FCC site. Basically, they're approving their device. So there was information that they released out there, and that'snotfunny.com actually broke the story, and I'll link that in the show notes. But it really just gives the specs of the device. It's got a gigabyte of RAM on it. It does 802.11 AC. It's got 8 gigabytes of embedded memory, a USB and an SD slot, and 2 tuners. So really, it's got the oomph of like a TiVo Bolt. And 2 tuners that you'll be able to record shows with, probably in some sort of cloud. A lot of this is just speculation because these devices are not out for mass consumption yet. And I don't even think TiVo is really mentioning this at all. It was kind of just found on the FCC site, released last week. And while this device was exciting maybe 2 years ago, I'm starting to feel like there are other options hitting the market this year to compete with the TiVo Maverick. Of course, we will test all of those, and you'll get a better idea when we go over them on this show. Okay, next order of business. Even though Joel's not here, everyone's favorite FCC chairman, Ajit Pai, was a bit ridiculous in front of Congress this week. And it's unfortunate Joel's not here because Joel and I usually have a good time ragging on Ajit. So this week in Bad Ajit involves Ajit going in front of Congress, in front of the Oversight Committee for the FCC. Now, before I get into what happened, a bit of background. Ajit Pai, to his credit, has been recognized for his support of the First Amendment and basic free speech, free press. For instance, last year, while receiving award for this, he was quoted as saying, "Most people recognize that the First Amendment is a critical element of the parchment that governs our land. But what gives it meaning is a culture that believes in it, one in which Americans stand vigil for free speech and a free press." And he's been quite vocal about this in the past, and that's a great thing. To his credit. In an op-ed he wrote a few years back for the Wall Street Journal, he argued that the government, quote, has no place pressuring media organizations into covering certain stories, end quote. He went on in the op-ed to basically say that the government pressuring media organization is the first step towards policing newsrooms. Now, I bring this up because he was recently appointed chairman of the FCC by President Trump. And recently, President Trump has said that, and I quote, New York Times, NBC, ABC, and CNN weren't his enemy, but an enemy of the people. Now, I know, I think the problem here, and when it comes to, distrust in media, and I mean, it's warranted to an extent, and a lot of it, I think, comes to the punditry. And what people don't do, or at least what I see that people really aren't, when they're piling on, they're confusing punditry with actual news reporting. Now, I mean, I don't like any of the cable news networks. I'm just not a fan. I think the news is too soft. They really don't take any big deep dives on anything. And it's all of them. Fox, CNN, MSNBC. They're all very surface. But the pundits aren't news. The news usually comes on during the day. And at night, you have your Rachel Maddows and your Bill O'Reillys and and those are pundits. It's like the difference in the New York Times between like the op-ed section and the news section. Krugman, who writes for the New York Times, he's always in the op-ed. It's an opinion. It's an editorial. And I think people are kind of, when they say that the press is the enemy, an op-ed isn't really the press. It's not news. It's someone's opinion. It's an editorial that's written. And personally, to conflate those two things, I think is very dangerous. And for the president to call the press an enemy of the people is extremely dangerous. Yeah, but I wanted to go into a bit of that background because that's why, with Ajit being such a supporter of a free press and the president that appointed him essentially attacking the free press, I mean, I'm curious where he stands. I mean, because he did. I remember the quote about the government has no place pressuring media organizations into covering certain stories, which you're kind of doing if you're unhappy. I mean, I assume the president is unhappy about the coverage he's been getting from those organizations. So he's essentially calling them the enemy of the people, which to me, I translate that as pressure and a very strong first step towards newsroom policing. As Pai said, I'm curious to see how he falls on this issue. And I think Congress was as well, because he was asked during the oversight hearing by Senator Tom Udall, asked him if he shares Trump's belief that the press is, quote, the enemy of the American people, unquote. And Pai responded by saying that he didn't want to wade into larger political debates. Well, it's not a political. He had no problem expressing this before or talking about this before. Is the First Amendment really a point of debate? He's talked about this several times in the past. So, I mean, he was given another chance when Maggie Hassan really just kind of pointed the question back again to him to give him a second chance to answer. And he kind of brushed it off as saying he supported the First Amendment, but he never really said whether or not he agreed with the president saying that the press is the enemy of the people, which floored me. I mean, because that has to be, if you're the FCC chairman and you're a free speech advocate, he's won Ajit Pai has gotten awards for his free speech and freedom of the press advocacy. For him not to shout that down, or at least make a statement saying that he doesn't agree with the president there, is just shocking. And again, and the reason why I bring this up is because it's a theme. Ajit Pai says one thing, and then when it's politically inconvenient, he does another. Or he'll even say something like, I support net neutrality, and then find some loophole to not vote for it, or that he supports your privacy. And when the opportunity comes to vote for protecting your privacy against your internet service provider, he votes against it because he says it's not fair to hold your internet service provider to a different standard than Facebook or something that the FTC would do. And that's just a complete cop out. That's like saying that let's say that there was some issue at CMS, or the Center of Medicare Services, and the VA. It's like saying, well, it would be great if we fixed this problem at CMS, but I'm not going to fix this problem at CMS because we haven't yet fixed it at the VA. It's a total cop-out. If you can fix a problem, you fix it. So, I mean, it's just really disappointing that this is our current FCC chairman, Badajit. Ugh. Okay, back to cord-cutting tech, because I've got a couple things here, more things outside of the Maverick that I did want to cover today. First is BritBox. BritBox is a streaming service that takes in the UK, you have the BBC and you have the ITV channels. What they do is they take both those channels, bring them together, and it's a whole bunch of British comedy, drama, mysteries, all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, if you're like an Anglophile, which I'm a bit for British comedy, then this sounds like it might be, a pretty good service to at least try out, because I think they give you a free trial. Yeah, they do. They give you a free trial, a 1 week free trial, and then it's month to month, so you can cancel anytime. It's $6.99 a month. Now, to get an idea, like they have like EastEnders is on there, Keeping Up Appearances, so there's some classic shows, some newer shows, they have, Ab Fab is on there, which I was a huge fan of, my wife too. Are You Being Served? A bit of Fry and Laurie, like early Hugh Laurie stuff. So, I mean, it's all kinds of cool stuff. I really recommend checking that out. The Office, Faulty Towers, Pride and Prejudice, Blackadder, Upstairs, Downstairs, a lot of good English TV. I mean, this was just released about a week or two ago, and it currently streams on Apple TV, the 4th gen Apple TV, Roku, iPhone, iPad, Androids. Chromecast is coming soon. So currently I don't see Amazon on there. And the BritBox is currently only available in the US. Okay, before I get to baseball, Verizon has actually done something kind of good for people looking for pure internet service and they don't want to deal with a yearly contract. They're making basically a prepaid plan, no contract, so basically like month to month, or you don't even need a credit check. So I guess this is also good for, if someone had some credit issues or something like that and you can't get a contract lockdown. They'll give you 25 Mbps up and down for $60 a month, including the router. So that's pretty good. Not great, because I can get in on a yearly deal for $50 a month. But I mean, it's okay. And I'm wondering if, and I'm curious to check this out, because currently I get a deal with Verizon, and I'll drop it. At the end of the contract, I'll either drop it and sign up with Comcast, and then immediately drop Comcast and go back to Verizon on the new deal to re-up my deal. But I mean, that's what I used to do. The last time, they actually just let me re-up it without any problems. But I have heard people complaining, like, now I don't know if this is Fios, but other providers, what they will do is if you get in their 1 year deal, they will not let you just renew the deal. Like, you have to go in, your price just goes up. Verizon's actually let me renegotiate the contract when my term was up and just get the new one. But if you can't, and you're in an area with Verizon, you can just pick up their service for a month and then try to renegotiate, or maybe get on Verizon service. So I mean, it does give you a little bit of flexibility. Speed's not great at 25 MIPS, but that's plenty to cut the cord. I mean, HD stream's only 5 to 7 MIPS, so that'll let you run, 3 of them and still have some room for internet. So, 25 MIPS is Mbps is plenty to cut the cord with. Now, while $60 a month for 25 Mbps is not the best price, it does give you the flexibility to drop it when you want and have no contract. So that is a good thing, I guess. Credit where credit is due. I mean, there really aren't a lot of internet service providers out there that will even give you a month-to-month prepaid plan for home internet. So I guess like a little bit of a head tip there to Verizon. All right, so Major League Baseball. Now, in the past, watching baseball as a cord cutter was difficult. What I would do is I would pick up MLB TV. Now, MLB TV will get you. Now, I mean, this is in the past. There's a better way to do this now for many, many teams. But in the past, what I would do is I would get MLB TV. Now, you still might be interested in MLB TV because that gives you access to every single game played. But there are blackout rules. For instance, if a game is nationally televised, it won't air. Or if a game is in your local market, like, for instance, I live in the Baltimore, Washington area. So MLB TV will black out Orioles games for me and Nats games, actually. So I can't watch either of those two teams with MLB TV. There's a way around that, and I'll get to that later. And all of the games are, it's $112.99 for the entire 2017 season, which is, a great price. You can watch every baseball game you want as long as you're not blacked out because of ridiculous, antiquated licensing rules. Now, if you're not familiar with MLB's licensing, all the owners got together and they wanted to make sure that the teams got their own, they get a big share of the TV money, and they're afraid if they allow people in a local market to watch that game from some other service aside from the regional sports network, then the teams would lose money. And it's also to ensure that a team like the Yankees, who are popular all over the U.S., are that they're not going to get a bigger, piece of that pie. Like they're not going to be able to they're not going to be taking market share away from some of those smaller market teams. Now, while this may have made sense, 15 or 20 years ago or whatever, it doesn't now, where you have the availability of the internet. It's ridiculous. And all I think it does is put fans off. But MLB is waking up to it. And this year, of the 30 MLB teams, you can watch 20 of those teams over streaming services. And I'm going to go, you can watch them over, you can get the regional sports network over streaming services. Now, there are other ways to watch those 10 other teams. So I'm going to give you the list of these first 20 teams. And it's really the difference. The real crux of the matter here is the NBC regional sports networks and the Fox regional sports networks carry these teams. And Sling TV, the blue package, has the Fox regional sports networks. And there is a streaming service called Fubo TV, which has the NBC regional sports networks. Now, Fubo TV used to be really geared towards soccer, English football fans. And they would have a lot of soccer, ways to watch different, various soccer leagues from all over the world. Now, they have changed as of recently, and they're trying to make their package more geared towards sports fans. And they are, at the time of this podcast, they're the only ones offering the NBC affiliates. However, Sling TV recently announced that April 2nd, they will actually have the NBC regional sports networks. Now, the reason I'm giving you the Fubo TV option is because I don't know what package they're going to put the NBC regional sports networks on. So I wanted to let you know another option for the NBC networks, because I'm going to give you Sling Blue package for any team that, or I will recommend Sling Blue package for any team that airs on a Fox regional sports networks. And the reason for that is it's the cheapest. It's $25 a month to get that package. Now, the Fubo TV, currently the only one that does the NBC packages, regional sports networks, that's $34.99, $35. But I mean, it might just be depending on how, and I'll let you know when they announce it, but it depends where they're going to put these NBC regional sports networks, what packages they're going to do, and how much it's going to cost on Sling TV. So I wanted to give you two options just in case Sling TV does something crazy and shove the NBC networks on the other package, which would force you to have both the blue and the orange package for $40. And then the Fubo would be cheaper at $35. So I just wanted to give you options. Not saying it's going to work out that way. Hopefully they'll just put it on the blue package and you get the whole shebang for like $25. You're probably just sitting there going, oh, come on with it, Dennis. What channels, what teams? All right, so here it is. The NBC regional networks cover the A's, the Cubs, the Giants, the Phillies, and the White Sox. So those teams currently are on the NBC Sports Regional Networks, which means Fubo TV definitely, possibly Sling TV come April 2nd for those. The other teams that are on the Fox Regional Sports Networks, and I recommend getting Sling TV Blue to watch those, are the Angels, the Braves, the Brewers, the Cardinals, the Diamondbacks, the Indians, Marlins, Padres, Rangers, Rays, Reds, Royals, Tigers, Twins, and the New York Yankees. My Orioles are not in there. So if you are like me and team was not mentioned, stay tuned because there is another option. Now, remember how I mentioned that MLB TV has access to all the games, but it blacks out a couple based on where you're located? Because, I mean, that's what they do. I mean, let me get into this a little bit because, like I said, I'm near Baltimore, Washington, so the Orioles are blacked out on MLB TV. Now, what they do is, and we talked a little bit about this when we talked about the VPN episode, is there's information based off of where your IP address is coming from on the device you're using. So MLB TV will see my IP address and they'll say, oh, okay, well, you're located in Maryland. Maryland, you're not allowed to watch Orioles games. According to MLB TV, according to their licensing, you can't. So they will black you out. However, if you can make it look like your IP address is coming from somewhere else, then they're going to think you're in that place. And if that place is outside of the Orioles local market, my computer will start working because it thinks my computer is somewhere else. So what you can do is use a service like a VPN or a smart DNS that will make it look like your computer is in another location. Now, you're paying for MLB TV, so I have no ethical issue with this personally. I'm paying my money to them. They are providing me with content. Be aware that the end user license agreement forbids this. Now, the recourse is they just cut your service. So it's not like you're stealing because you're paying them money. You're just not playing by their rules. And I frankly think their rules are a little bit ridiculous because, why can't I buy this product if I live in a certain state? Seems kind of silly. So what options you have is, like I said, the VPN is an option, but a surefire way to do this is also with something called a smart DNS. Now, there's a company called Overplay Smart DNS, and I like them because they will actually um, they actually have a setup called, it's a smart DNS setup where you can go in and you can just set every single service you want and tell them where you want your computer to be, and it'll put it there, as opposed to a VPN, which will allow, which basically you need to make that connection to that server usually, for you to basically full the service. So with the smart DNS, what they'll do is you go in and you basically say, if I'm watching Netflix, I'm in America. If I'm in, and this is all hypothetical. And if I'm watching Hulu, I want to be here. And if I want to watch, European football, that won't air here, but I can go ahead and put myself in, a server over in Europe and watch, European soccer. So, I mean, it's all a possibility. Now, if one were to do this, once you sign up for Overplay Smart DNS, and I'll put a link in the show notes. There's actually instructions on their site on how to set up your device depending on what device you're using. I just use my laptop. I mean, hypothetically, of course, I would just use my laptop because it's just using a smart DNS with like a Roku or an Amazon Fire TV can be a bit cumbersome. So I just use my laptop, and I have an HDMI port on my laptop. If I want to watch on the TV, I'll just plug it into the television. But really, when you set yourself up with a smart DNS, you can hypothetically, I would pick a server in the United Kingdom because, then you can watch pretty much any market in the US. Now, you're probably wondering what's going on with the smart DNS. Really, all it does is, and again, during the episode where we covered VPNs, and that was really just a couple back, it's episode 35. And in it, I explained how, basically a high level on what a DNS server is and how it works. And it's really, every computer, every device out there has an IP address. A domain name server just is kind of keeps a link between a name like google.com and the IP address. So when you type google.com in a browser, a DNS server will, resolve what that is and basically forward your information onto the next hop to get where it's going. When it does that, it grabs and tags with geolocation information, and it passes it on to the end line saying, this is where that request came from. Well, a smart DNS proxy basically takes that information and substitutes it with other information, for instance, like another location. So that's really all it's doing. Don't expect to get any level of privacy or security out of this. And if MLB wanted to, they could probably figure out where you're coming from if they really wanted to target you. But that would be a lot of work for them with little benefit because you're paying them already. So there might be a time when they do start looking at this stuff and trying to stop people from doing it. But at least last season, they did not. And as a matter of fact, I even used my billing address. So it's not like I even misrepresented myself at all. I gave them my legitimate billing address where I live and everything. I just use a DNS server that changed my geolocation information to say I was in England and then I was watching Orioles games, hypothetically. So that's really about how easy that is. And it works with just about anything. Now, if you want the privacy and security, you're going to want to get a VPN to do that. Now, Overplay Smart DNS does have a VPN service, but for privacy and security, I would probably look back to episode 35 and listen there, because I do give some recommendations based off of what level of security you're actually looking for out of a VPN. So I definitely recommend listening to that episode if that's something that you care about. Some news just kind of broke when I was coming in today. And since I mentioned Sling TV is a good option to watch baseball, I wanted to end with letting people know that the cloud DVR that Sling TV was doing is live now, but only on Amazon Fire TVs, Fire TV sticks, and Fire tablets. Oh, and also the Roku devices. So Roku TVs and all the Roku streaming players. They'll give you, with the service, you get 50 hours of recording per month for $5 per month. And that's, you can watch, once you recorded it, you can watch it anytime, anywhere on any of those devices through your Sling account. You have conflict-free recording, basically, which means you can record simultaneous programs and not worry about one not firing off because you've used, the number of recordings at the same time. That you don't have to worry about that. They've even done something pretty cool with the management of, like, because you're going to get 50 hours for $5. What they'll do is they'll automatically, when your capacity is full, they'll automatically delete your oldest watched recording. So they won't just delete something that you haven't watched, which is, pretty cool. They'll just delete the oldest thing. And then you really don't have to put a lot of maintenance into this thing. Because that's one thing I did hate when I had a DVR, was trying to worry about maintaining, all the different shows I recorded. Bit of a pain. So, I mean, that's some great news. People have been waiting for that functionality for a while. They announced it a while back. It was in beta. Well, now it is live. And considering I mentioned Sling a bit during, the baseball segment, I figured that I would let you guys know that that is finally live. And I have to get out of here now and head home and test this thing out, because the news broke while I was sitting here talking to you guys. So please subscribe. I mentioned it earlier in the show. It really does help us out. We got some good things coming on down the road. We're making t-shirts, so more on that a bit later, but some merch should be hitting soon. So if you guys are looking for another way to support the show, or you want a stylish Grounded Reason podcast t-shirt, you'll be able to get one. And it's one way you can support the show. Leave a review if you're digging the show. Go into iTunes, go ahead and leave a review. Remember, it's free to subscribe, and it's free to leave a review. The t-shirt probably will cost some money, but if you don't want to spend any money, subscribing, especially in iTunes, is a really free way to show your support for the show. If you want to leave a question or comment for myself or Joel when he's here, when Mutaba clears up, you can email us. The email address is podcast@groundedreason.com. You can follow us at Twitter and check me out yelling at a bunch of reporters and writers getting things wrong about cord cutting. If you want to check that out, that's at Grounded Reason. You can go head on over to our Facebook page and leave a question, or you can do what the Christopher does and just leave a comment on the most recent podcast blog post, or any blog post. If you go through, you start reading stuff, you have some questions about that blog post, go ahead and leave a comment in there. Tell them, go ahead, actually even mention that you listen to the podcast and head on over to the blog to let those blog people to know that we're actually over here doing a podcast, and they can come check that out too. Little cross-marketing even. So that'll do it for this week. I'm Dennis Restaro, and this is not Joel Reeves. Take care, everyone.